So let's talk about the Rosicrucians again, because in the end of the documentary you talked with a man who had great knowledge about the Gnostics and the Rosicrucians.
Yeah, Tobias Churton. Yeah.
Right, I didn't remember his name. And he said that perhaps you're searching after a spiritual treasure, that the purpose of the Rosicrucians, from what I understood, were more the spiritual transformation related to, you know, alchemy and these kind of practices, not to find something physical, I guess. What do you think about that?
I think that is a very good point. I think it's something that might be valid, but I think that it is also a little bit sad if it's all there is. I think there can be both, because to me it has been an eye-opener, a door-opener, this path, if you like, that I have pursued.
Embarked on.
Yes, so to me, I think that I have found at least part of the spiritual treasure by pursuing this. So it's like the old tale about this old man who tells his sons that I leave my field to you, I bury that treasure out there, and then he dies. And the sons, of course, okay, we will go treasure hunting. So they spend all their time digging up this field, and they don't find the treasure. There is no treasure. But the next year, they have the most beautiful harvest ever. So in the same way that we can look for the physical treasure here, but maybe it is the pursuit that is the treasure, what you encounter on your quest, that is the true beauty. And it could be the best part of it, for even if it should be a physical treasure, then all kinds of problems could arise if these objects were to be found.
Yes.
So maybe the idea is better, that we shall be happy with this goose that hatches golden eggs, and be happy to receive a small golden egg every day and not kill the goose.
And there's so much there already in Shakespeare, like the wisdom there.
Yeah.
To me, it's this deep knowledge and wisdom that I'm wondering where they got from. Like, how did they have this wisdom, like to be or not to be? I mean, that's what we're trying to do today, to be present. They're saying that's the big question, that's the big question. And then you found, you know, sacred geometry, and it's apparently connected to the stars. So apparently they are educating humanity.
Well, they said that chemists are poets, so they thought of poetry as alchemy, and this gold making. That is almost the same thing, because alchemists, we said, okay, they were gold makers and they never succeeded in making gold, but there is some kind of spiritual gold making instead, that it's the real thing. And I think that they used all the heritage of the wisdom that they could lay their hands on when they were creating these places.
I'm like wondering, where did they get it from? Because we talked about a while ago the link between the Knight Templars and then the Masonry and then the Rosicrucians. Did they perhaps, were they what would I say, påvirket, affected, influenced by the Masons, Freemasonry, perhaps? Was that the start of the Rosicrucians?
I think it was the other way around, that the Masons became influenced from these guys, but there is a tradition here, and they had access to all the books that we have access to today. Maybe even they had more books, maybe some have been lost.
Maybe Gnostic books?
Yes, I think, yes, very much so.
From Christianity, like the tradition with the Christians, or who preserved the spiritual part of Christianity. I would call the Gnostics, who preserved this knowledge. And I think they lived in those times as well. I'm not quite sure about that, but I'm wondering if this has to do with Gnosticism as well.
There may be Gnostic links here, but what is Gnosticism? I have heard so many definitions, so that is why I hesitate to give a definite answer. But if you think about Gnosis as inner knowledge, I think you are hitting the nail. And just look at a play like Romeo and Juliet. You have these two families who are at war with each other, and then love unites them, but they have to die. So that is almost an alchemical process with the petrification, that they have to rot and then new things arise. So at the end, when these lovers die, then the families become friends. There is something to that, and other people have seen that The Merchant of Venice is really a Kabbalistic play where you have different characters being the different sephiroth. So I think that you are allowed to put whatever you like into them. But here is the good thing about what I bring, because to the tourist trade in Stratford, it is bad news to say that your guy Shakespeare, he was a straw man. He performed his part excellently. He was so important, and the image that you have a guy from the common class being the greatest of them all, that has had an important influence on people, that they can be inspired from this.
We can be anything.
Everybody will have the opportunity to reach the top. But now that knowledge is so common, then everybody can go to the university, at least in Norway, and you have the internet where you can get knowledge. So we don't need that anymore. I think it's time that we allow for these gentlemen who had read it all, at least Francis Bacon, his motivation, his ambition was to make all the world's knowledge his knowledge, because he wanted to share. The advancement of learning was one of his most important books, apart from Shakespeare, of course. But when we think that we have these noblemen who had all the sources, and they could bake whatever they wanted into these places, with that in the back of our minds, we are allowed to look for connections that we couldn't have looked for if this was a player who wrote his next play just to have money to eat.
Or to please someone, or to, if you got an assignment, you had to write it for the Queen, so you had to write it a certain way. They were more free to write. They
could express whatever they wanted, put all the philosophy in the world and Hermeticism into this play if they so wanted. But you can't really demand this of a guy from Stratford, even if he went to school, as some people say he did, which is not certain by any means. Not that that is important, because there is so much more to these plays than if you went to school or not. There are sources that were so scarce. He had to have access to extremely rare books that were not even translated into English. So,
and he didn't travel much either. And in Shakespeare's plays, there are so many descriptions of Italy and.
Yeah, but then you have people who say that, oh, those descriptions of Europe, they are ridiculous, and look at Bohemia having a coast, that's ridiculous, and going by channel from this city to that city. In Italy, you can't do that. But then other people come along and say, well, in Shakespeare's days, you really could. There were channels, and Bohemia really had a coastline because they owned a little bit of land down there where there was an ocean. So.
But I have to jump a little bit to numerology, because that's something that's also here, or Gematria or Gematria, and which means that each letter has a number, so like a word has a value, and they're very, this is so interesting, because Francis Bacon had a special number. 33. 33. Do you know what that means, 33? Are you into numerology as well?
Not very much, but I have, of course, the obvious one is that Jesus was 33 years when he died. And Ries Church, that you know very well, it's a part of this awesome. Parish. To get to the gallery, there are 33 steps.
Okay.
So it's, Masonry has 33 degrees in America and England. But it's a very special number. I'm not a numerologist, so I can't really say, but I just noticed that it is a special number. But in geometry, it has no special meaning, I think. I have not seen it, at least. And not for this geometry.
But the number 53.
That is something else, yes. I love that number.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
so
I'm 53 years old. So
oh, seriously?
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, tell us, so you discovered 53 several times in the Shakespeare's work.
Because Bacon is found twice in that book, and both times on page 53. There are 3 sections. And
the word bacon is found.
Yeah. And you have the comedies, the histories, and the tragedies, and they all begin with page number 1. So you have 3 page 53s, and those 2 Bacons are found on 2 separate page 53s, which is extraordinary, I think. And even I see that they have doctored the page numbers. They skip 2 numbers just to get to 53. Yes. So you go from 46 to 49, and then 53 follows.
That is strange. Why would they do that?
I think it's pretty obvious. They wanted to put Bacon on 53 because 53 is linked to this this geometry in the sky and the 3, 4, 5 triangle. That I believe that is sacred geometry, really. And there is it's a beautiful image that can be inspiring. The 3, 4, 5 triangle. If you think about what man symbolized by 5, because we have 5 senses and we have 5 limbs, so 5 is the human number, and the world is 4. We have 4 elements and 4 cardinal directions, and we think of God as 3. We have the Trinity, and the 3, 4, 5 triangle is a geometric expression of Pythagoras, which says that the square of A plus the square of B equals the square of C. And then that is the square of 3 plus the square of 4 equals the square of 5. And the square is the perfect expression of something. So in order to have 5 squared, the perfect man, you need to have a perfect relationship to God, which is the square of 3, plus, and this is something that people forget, a perfect relationship with the world, 4. That will bring about the perfect man. So many are just going for the square of 3. They go in the cloister or and just focus on prayer and God. And other people, they say God is, forget about God, it's the world. But by the 3, 4, 5 triangle, you need to add these parts together.
Right.
So,
and what was so fascinating was that in the documentary 7 Steps to Mercy, when you and Robert Crompton went to the airport, and you had just talked about 53.
Yeah.
Then you left from gate 53. And I was like, no, that's impossible.
And that's true. That is not something that we faked. That
I
is real.
saw that. I understood that.
Yeah.
That was just so fascinating.
Synchronicity, huh?
Yes.
Serendipity.
And also that it says that Shakespeare died when he was 53 or something. On this...
this memorial plaque in Stratford Church, he says his achieved age was 53, but he died, we don't know exactly when he died because we only know when he was baptized and when he was buried. But normally we think that he was both born and died on April 23rd, which is the St. George Day. And that is also funny because St. George, his flag, what was that? That was the Rosicrucians. Oh. The red cross. That doesn't necessarily mean the rose, the flower, rosy, is red rose color. So the Rosicrucians is the flag of St. George, which is also the flag of England. And this is the day that Shakespeare supposedly is born and dies.
Huh.
But this was on his 52nd birthday. So I say that 53 is questionable.
Yeah, but it says 53 there.
Yeah, and there is...
Which is interesting.
It is 345 geometry on that plaque as well, which I demonstrate in the book The Organist, which is now out in English and is called The 7 Steps to Mercy, of course, because of the film. I will give you a copy.
Yes,
yeah?
I'd love to read it.
So there you can see that there is a 345 cipher, geometric cipher. And the instruction for this 345 cipher, this acrostic geometric method, is given on that very plaque.
Oh, it's kind of a teaching, this is how you do it?
It says, stay passenger, read if thou canst. And that is an invitation to look closer. To read if thou canst, whom envious death has placed within this monument. And envious death. Envious death, okay. It is acceptable. But in a cipher method that is linked here, that Francis Bacon used, then he switched Greek and Latin letters, so that, for instance, an H is an eta in Greek, that is an E, so he used this method. And then with the same method, you can interchange the V and the N, because the nu is the N in Greek. And if you look at envious, and you change one of these N's, V's to an N, that is envious death. Okay. And Ennius, he was a famous poet, and he was the very first person in the world who used acrostics, as we know. And he signed his own works using acrostics. And we only know when he died. And that was in the year 169 before Christ.
They're just hidden messages all over.
And 169, that is 16 and 9, square of 4, and the square of 3. And 16, you mentioned Gematria, is a Q, that's 16th letter in that alphabet, and the I is 9. And then the question, could there be a Q in that, on that plaque? Many letters, there is one Q, and that Q is in the margin, as an acrostic would be. And if you take the 345 angle, you find an I. So you have the 16 and the 9. Ennius death, and then you have this geometric acrostic method that opens this whole mystery. And you find another...
Where is this?
It's in Stratford Church and Holy Trinity Church in Stratford. So this is one instruction. There is another instruction in the folio on one of the pages, 53, where you have another invitation to use the same...
On page 53?
Yeah.
There is a description or
an invitation.
An invitation.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. It is.
Well, everything is actually interesting.
So these
Wow.
two invitations, one in Stratford and one in the folio, to do that teaches you how to use the method.
Okay. I have to talk about something else too, because I just got that picture in my mind, the I am.
Yeah.
I am. I mean that when you said that in the documentary, I was, and you asked Robert, "What is that to you?" That right away was God for me,
Yeah.
because I've heard so many times the I am, the I
And
am.
even the will of God, will I am. Here.
Yeah. So where did you find that? Why was that significant when you found the word I am in Shakespeare?
Yeah, oh, that is extraordinary. That is also on page 53.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have these two pages, 53, because you have Bacon on that page, and you have the Wain. That is the only time you see the Wain that I mentioned, the constellation, and you also have Botus on that page. And I was looking, where are these in relation to each other? And I also see that there is a capital B up on the page, and it says eggs and butter, which is a typical course, but you can have eggs with butter, of course, and you can have eggs with bacon. So they are somehow linked, and they both begin with capital B's. So I connected Botus and Wain because of the chimera, and I also connected bacon and butter. And I found that there is a cross at I am, and you can put a compass, and the distance is exact from I am out to the B in butter and bacon, and the Botus and Wain. And
awesome.
there is a 6x7 relationship here, which symbolizes the square in the compass in the sky, and in the center you have I am, which is God's name that he presented in Exodus 3:14, pi, the circle.
Pi.
Yeah. The pie in the sky.
In which play did you find this I am?
It was
People can
yeah,
look.
in the first part of King Henry IV, because there are two parts of that play, so there are two separate plays. So this is one King Henry IV.
Are there, have you been looking into all plays of Shakespeare, or has there been certain that are more important than others?
Certain that are more important.
Okay.
Definitely
which ones?
so. The Tempest is key. That has everything.
Oh.
Yeah, the Tempest gives us, as the first word in the Tempest is boat Swain, written Botus Wain.
Oh.
Yeah, and on the second page you have the signature that tells us that Francis Bacon is involved, and you have Neville also there. I haven't found Darby there, but I haven't really looked for him. You have to know what you look for, because people say that, oh Petter, I don't think that your results are valid because you knew what you were looking for. But hey, if you don't know what you're looking for, how can you find it? I mean, you need to know what to look for. And if it isn't there, it isn't there. You will not find it if it is not there. So I can't see that can be valid, because I hear that they say that if you want to find something, you will find it. But I know from experience that
but
you won't.
That's within science too. When you do investigations, you have an hypothesis about what might happen. And people are saying that, that's a problem because you are actually affecting the experiment. But that's an interesting thing, that our energy is actually affecting the experiment, and we can never be neutral. We can never be neutral in our heads. Like, we don't have a neutral thought. Like, every thought comes from a place in us that is colored somehow. So that would be too much to expect, I think, that you wouldn't have any compass at all, just see what happens.
Yeah, I think that science isn't necessarily neutral. I think that mathematics, that can be exact. But if you are performing scientific studies, it's difficult to pinpoint
not
things.
influence.
You see general ideas of things, but of course I have known to a certain extent what I was looking for, but not always. For instance, when I was opening the folio the first time, I thought that Bacon might be involved, and I looked at the first poem and I see that there is an acrostic TWO. And okay, maybe I should go to page 2. And that hunch is not me knowing that I need to go to page 2. That was the acrostic telling me to go there. And then I see on page 2 there is another TWO. Oh, that's strange. And I see that there is a lowercase w, which is a typo. It's an error. And I go back and I see, oh, this is the same error in that first poem. So 2 typos repeated, and that will increase the odds tremendously. And then I look traversely to the other column on that same page, and I see B.A. Con, TWO, Bacon. Wow. So it is leading me. It's not me knowing what I'm looking for. But of course, when you see enough evidence, then you begin looking for things. And then I was using my computer to see how many times do you find Bacon in the book. And then I'm looking for Bacon, actively looking for Bacon. But still, there are only 2 occurrences.
Within all the plays?
Yeah. And me wanting them to be there doesn't produce that they are there, and they are on page 53. So okay.
But what do you think? Some plays are more important than others. Like, why will the Tempest be so important? Like in my world, it's Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet and.
Yeah. Romeo and Juliet does not have many ciphers. Okay. I think that there is one significance, and that is that in the first folio, it begins on page 53.
Oh.
Yeah, but they have taken out the famous prologue, and that begins with the word 2 households. And I think that they want to show us that it is not 3 times 53, it's just 2, because that makes 106, which is the Rosicrucian number.
So it seems like they put intentionally some information in some place, and other places are for maybe other things, education.
But the Tempest is, it tells about this magician, author, character who is taking his leave now, and he is breaking his staff and drowns his book. But this is on an island, and the new temple is on the island. And on the last page of the Tempest, we get another instruction, and that is to pierce the mercy Sephiroth on the tree of life, because on the last page you see that it is a 5x8 setup, and you see that you have mercy in the margin, and it made me test, what if I superimpose the tree of life as it is found on Oak Island on top of that page, and I see that mercy on Oak Island and mercy in the text, they are at the exact same spot.
Interesting.
And then in the text we need to pierce mercy to free all faults. And
so they're kind of encouraging us to search?
To go for that spot. But the Rosicrucian Farm Fraternitatis, it encourages
that's the book
search.
that the Rosicrucians
Yes.
published.
And that is very explicit, that you really need to look for the tomb, because it tells about the discovery of this tomb in which there was this famous lamp in the vault of Father R.C. And this lamp is not the sun, but it has learned to shine from the sun. And this is the same description that is given to the menorah in another Kabbalistic book called the Zohar. So you see,
So
there
they're
is a
saying that
parallel.
there's a tomb where Father R.C.,
Yeah,
which stands for the Rosicrucians.
The founder of the Rosicrucians, he lived to
buried.
106, so this is why the 106 is important.
Oh.
So it's
And
symbolic.
with him, the menorah is buried?
Yeah, and he lies in his grave, perfectly preserved, with his large book in his arms. And I think that maybe this book it could be as a secret book of some, but I think that he is buried with all the manuscripts of Shakespeare. So this menorah idea was just some interesting possibility until a friend of mine called Frode Larsen. He is a teacher of mathematics in the University of Tromsø. He said, Petter, did you notice that you have the menorah on the memorial plaque in Stratford? I said, no, I didn't. Take a look. Look at the last word of the first line. And he was right. It says Maronem, which is menoram reversed. And then it follows terra tegit. And terra tegit is the earth covers. And tegit is a transitive verb. And in Latin that means that you need to have the noun in accusative. And menoram is perfect Latin with accusative. So it means the earth covers the menorah. And that was the confirmation I needed, because until then I only had the idea that because of the description of the lamp in the tomb of Father R.C. that we were talking about the menorah. So that was just my intuition talking to me. But Frode gave me the confirmations.
And your knowledge about ciphering and cryptations, is that the right words?
Cryptography.
Cryptography.
Yeah.
Is that from Freemason, because you were a Freemason member?
Partly. The Gematria interest arose in my Masonic days, and the 3-4-5 triangle, of course, is something that I stumbled across, and square and compass, obviously. But I had to learn about ciphers by reading books, because you can't just take a course. There is no cryptography education that I know in Norway. So I began by calling the military to see if there were experts there whom I could talk to, but they only know modern cryptography, the computers. So these old methods, you just have to rely on the old books. So I have quite a library of old cipher books.
Okay, it was really cool though, because this guy, I think it's called what's his name? He had an IQ on...
Jola Sigmund.
Jola Sigmund.
Yeah,
he spoke very highly of you and your work, and he's like has an IQ of 192.
Yeah.
And he is making like these...
That's terrifying, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. But he's a very pleasant man to talk to.
Yes.
You do not feel intimidated when you're approaching.
Yeah, and you said that, you know, it's there, what you found, it's correct, it's there, you cannot overlook it.
Yeah, at least to say that it is coincidence should not be your first hypothesis. I think it's less likely that it is coincidence than it is a design. And he is a guy who is prepared to make such a statement, because he is a typographer, he is a high-rank Mason, he is an intelligent man, and he also creates ciphers and codes and systems as his job. Yeah, he publishes them. He makes puzzles for magazines like Dagbladet. I think they had Jola Sigmund ciphers, and that is how I knew of his name. So I contacted him and sent him my book. and wonder, look at this. Can you? Is this valid? And then he called me just before Christmas and said that he was very, very impressed, and he had been inspired a lot by what he had read, and that was my
really
Christmas
cool.
present that year.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, what's the next step now? I mean, I attended your conference or this symposium.
Our Shakespeare symposium, yeah.
Yes, at the Litteraturhuset in Oslo, where you were talking about the authorship, and I really understood how big this debate is, especially in Norway now. And there are, you know, those who are against and those who are supporting, and there are a lot of engaged voices.
Yep.
So what's your next step now in this work?
We have this wonderful new film that is being launched. This is a film that has been screened on the NRK, but we have a 3-part series version of it, which is even better.
In English?
In English. It is just in English.
Okay.
So we had to have Norwegian subtitles in Norway, but this is a production meant for the international market. So we really hope that it will find a market, and it should, but you are up against prejudice here, and people are fierce defenders of the orthodox view of Shakespeare. So it is difficult to really find channels who would send it, but I cross my fingers. So telling the story is what I do, and on Oak Island it is up to the owners, the Lagina brothers, what they do. I have no say in that, but they know my theory, so there is really no use for me being there because they know it.
Right.
Petter is talking about the mercy point,
yes.
yeah, that is his thing. Yeah.
So how can people get involved if they want to support you or just follow the journey?
We have a website called 7 Steps to Mercy, which is 7 and steps, STEPS, to mercy.com, where you can learn more about us, and I think that you will be able to find enough to make a reasonable judgment about you can be obsessed, of course. Many people do obsess over this, I can tell you.
Yes, it is contagious. I mean, I've been sitting up all night watching this documentary again and again.
But just hearing me talk about it without seeing anything, because seeing is believing.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to not have any visual help, but the story is, as you began, more fantastic than fiction. I mean, this is.
Perhaps we're only getting started.
Yeah, maybe so. But anyway, to me, it has been a wonderful journey, and it seems that it is not over yet. And being here with you, it's part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was really enlightening and interesting.
My
and
pleasure.
Fascinating. Good luck with your search and
Thank
journey.
you.
And thank you for watching, guys. Remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from Oslo. Bye-bye.